Okay, so we're moving back from the world of analysis back to data. It's a short presentation about helping you to publish, discover, and reuse data. I want to start off with this figure, which shows the total volume of scientific data. It's not real data, it's just a schematic figure. And here the fitness of use of that data. So yesterday I was talking about existing workflows, so data that are easily flowing to operational oceanography or operational data processing, so that they become quickly easy to use, easy to access. And that's that yellow bit here. So it's a small portion of the total data that is available, but it's very easy to use. The green bit is the fourth case that I presented yesterday. So data that are in open access, that scientists who have a very distinct need, they gather all the data, they put lots of effort into harmonizing it, and then they publish it, and then it becomes, so they move that green bit into the yellow bit by doing lots of work, manual work. Now today I want to talk about this gray zone, which we call the long tail of scientific data. That's data that is, they are non-public. They come from individual scientists, from institutes. So data that are not usually submitted to data archives and are not accessible. That's the result of a survey that was done last year, asking scientists about access and use of data, and 84% were saying that they wish to have easy access to data from other scientists, but only 36% said that their own data was available. And that's what we call the data gap. And now we need to put lots of effort, and actually there's lots of effort being put now to fill that gap, to bring that data available to everyone. That's a quote saying that at the end of the day, science is a social process, and you'll never be able to contribute to the whole body of knowledge if you hide yourself and you hide your data. So we need to find ways to convince scientists to share their data, and the best way is to provide some incentives and good reasons to do so. Now, sharing data is one thing. Sharing knowledge, scientists are quite good at that. Sharing ideas, sharing the interpretation of their data. So we've been doing that by publishing in journals. So that's easy. But with data, it's different. And that's that slide where you compare the view of publishing in journals versus the view of publishing data. With journals, it's well accepted. Well, people know that when you publish a paper, it's uniquely and persistently identified, and you can cite it. Whereas with data, now it's becoming more and more the case that when you publish a data set, you get a DOI, you get a citation. But it's not yet known by most scientists. The concept of publishing, you publish your ideas, you publish in journals, but to understand that you can also publish the data. That's not in the habit of scientists, and we need to make that clear. Multiple copies versus typically one copy. I'm not sure, that's a slide from a webinar. But the way I see it, yeah, well, well, you can have, I'll come back to that later. I need other slides to get back to that. Then journals. It's easy to find a journal nowadays. To find data, it's not easy at the moment. Yeah, so we need to fill that gap. And services. Nowadays, you use impact factors from the papers that you publish. And for research data, again, that's not the way it is up to now, but this is changing. So we need to fill that gap and make sure that there is an advantage to publish data sets, that you will get impact, that you will get citation index that take account of that. So, incentives and solution. One is to convince scientists to publish and archive data, to show them how to use controlled vocabularies and registers. These are tools that help to make sure that the data can be compared with other data sets from other scientists. Then show how bibliometrics and impact factors will help. Demonstrate how data and journal publications can be cross-linked, so you can easily go from a journal to a data set and go from a data set to a journal, and show ways and facilitate the reuse of data. So if we start with the first one, this is available, it's a small video on YouTube, but of course we have to find another way to get it. So that's a small video made by Nature, the Nature Publishing Group. So it's meant to promote their new data journal, which is called Scientific Data, but it's quite appropriate for any journal or for the general issue of publishing data.
It's frustrating when you can't find exactly what you want, exactly when you want it. You know it's out there, but it's hard to find. And when it comes to research data, even if you do find it, how exactly do you understand it? Scientific data is an innovative new way of making data visible to and reusable for the entire scientific community. We're interested in not just the result, but how you get there. We publish data descriptors that help you understand the data. Publication makes it possible to credit and cite data so that your work is the maximum. A reliable peer review process makes it easier to confidently reuse data, share knowledge, and accelerate discovery. Open access platform makes data easier to find and easier to understand. We categorize and curate the data descriptor to increase your data's impact. We believe in improving the way that data is managed, shared and interpreted. We believe in open science in the scientific community because we believe that data sharing and reuse speeds the scientific process and facilitates discovery. Scientific data, helping you publish, discover and reuse research data.
So, because it's becoming more popular to archive data, and we want to push scientists to archive the data, lots of people are getting into data hosting, and it will become tricky at a point to decide where you should send your data. So you have data publishers that are coming up. Pangea is one. ENA is the European Nucleotide Archive. That's more for molecular and mainly sequences. And Dryad is also for a new data publisher for almost any type of data. You have visual repositories like Figshare, which is initially meant only for pictures, posters, figures, but they tend to accept more and more a bit of everything. And then you have journal dedicated to data, Earth system science data, I talked about it yesterday, scientific data, that one from Nature, and Giga Science from from Biomed Central. So there's, at the moment, you don't have too many, but we expect that soon there'll be lots and lots of data publishers and journal publishers going for data journals. I just want to go over the 3 data publishers, these 3. ENA was typically for medical science. Now they're going into marine data, especially with the new EU projects, Microbe 3, and in collaboration also with Terra Oceans. They're developing a single project for marine molecular data. So that will become a good resource for us. Pangea has been using citations and DOIs since almost 10 years now. So it's been a pioneer in that sense. So it provides detailed metadata about the data sets, and because it was a pioneer with using DOIs, and because data publishers use DOIs, the cross-linking between the 2 worlds, data publishers and journal publishers, is developing fast between Pangea and the journals. It's also with Dryad. They also have the DOI. Dryad is mainly active in the US. The main difference between Dryad and Pangea is that Pangea is a relational database. So all the data sets are curated and imported into a database. So they are machine readable, and you can extract data points and combine them with other databases. Whereas Dryad has taken the option of being quicker at processing the data sets. They can provide you with a DOI faster. It's quick and dirty because they simply use a repository. If you send an Excel file, they just store the Excel file and they give you a DOI. So that's quick to get the DOI, but then if you want to, as an end user, if you want to combine data sets from different papers, different scientists, then you have on your own to go through the process of picking the Excel file, the text file, the MATLAB file, and trying to harmonize the whole thing. Whereas the approach of Pangea and other databases is to do that step from the beginning, to take the raw data from the different formats and import that in one database in a single format. So that's fast, but in the end, for reuse, it's more difficult. Controlled vocabularies and registries, you have tools out there, tools that we use to when you do data management, but tools that you can also use before submitting. Citations provides controlled vocabularies mainly for infrastructures. By that I mean standard names for research vessels or for platforms, drifters, or any type of instruments that we use, like devices. And also controlled vocabularies for parameters. All that vocabulary is mainly developed by the British Oceanographic Data Center and the NERC data grid, and that's what is used by Citations. If you want to have controlled vocabularies for geographic names, names for political and ecological regions, then you can use marineregions.org. I won't go into it, I want to be quick. But if you go there, you have a hierarchical system, so you can put in your latitude, longitude, and then you get the corresponding regions. They have some web services. It's not well developed yet, but they are working on that. So you could programmatically submit latitude, longitude, and you get all the corresponding regions. Worms, for taxonomy of marine organisms. There was talk about FishBase, for example, yesterday. So all the information from FishBase is being harvested by worms. So at the moment, worms is the largest registry for marine species. For marine species, it's even better than the NCBI on the US side. It's more complete for marine. For other domains, it's not complete. But that's the one we use for marine system, marine species. And again, they have web services. I won't go online. So you could search if you want to know about a single species. You could go there, search by scientific name or common name, and then you get full details about. So behind worms, there's a whole system of editors. So specialists per different taxonomic groups, and they review all the taxonomy in worms. So you get the latest accepted name, and you also have all the previous names. So when we archive data, taxonomic data, in databases, now we use the AFIA ID. So that's the unique identifier for each species, the latest accepted name. So when you prepare a data set with taxonomy, if you could search in worms and then provide the taxonomic ID, that saves us a step, and that also, if we do it, we make assumptions, and then we have to ask you to validate that. If you do it from the start, then it saves communication issues. So that you can use the search for a single search, but you also have the match taxa. So you can even submit a text file with a list of species, and they will make a match and give you an analysis of. They can give you all these information for each of your species. For chemical substances, you have SHIBI, which is maintained by EBI, the same as EBI is the European Bioinformatics Institute. They are the one developing ENA, the European Nucleotide Archive. So they're the same people. So it's same idea. For each chemical, you have a unique identifier. So when you submit data, again, if it's chemical data, making the step to search for all your chemicals and providing the unique ID, that helps. It's something that we have to do, but if you do it first, then we're sure that we can archive the right thing. We don't have to ask you to validate. Environmental features, that's in development. It's Envo, it's called Envo. It goes from defining environmental features like the oxygen minimum zone, for example, would have a unique ID, so that in the end, when you try to go in the databases and look for a given feature like oxygen minimum zone, then you can easily retrieve all the information about these features. So that's in development, but they will provide IDs for different features in the marine environment, essentially, yes. So bibliometrics and impact factors. I have another video there, but not yet, later. Okay. This shows the number of citations for papers published in 2009, 87 up to 2001, so older paper, more recent papers. You have two curves. The yellow one are citations of papers that did not include data, for which the data was not available. And the blue curve for data that publications that had data available, showing that when your data is available, the citation of the paper is increased. And of course, the older paper get more, well, you have more years to cite it, so to get knowledge of the data behind. So, increase the citation of papers. Just this one I'd like to look at. I'll read it here, it's easier. So the first one is citations for data. Yeah. Okay. Papers with data not shared. Yes. Yeah. Again, for data with papers for which the data was not available, not shared, and papers for which data was available and shared. There was something else about that. But again, showing that there is, if you share your data, it increases the citation of your papers.
Sorry,
Yes.
I'm just curious. Do you have the same analysis, but also looking at how many times the papers are cited? How many times the papers are cited, depending also if they are published on open access journals or not?
No, I don't have a figure on that. At least in Europe, we're starting to build that sort of analysis. Not myself, but yet there is an initiative called Open Air, which is the European Commission mechanism to promote open access, and that's their mandate to run these analyses and to report to the EC about the performance of the projects. But I don't have that. No. Yes, so what we are missing is a data citation index, an impact factor, so some metrics, as you said, about the impact of publishing data. And that's where the video comes. And again, that's commercial. It's a video from Thomson Reuters. They are.
Data is the foundation of discovery, with new advancements being made every day. But how can you make intelligent connections between data and the work it informs? To uncover the influence of data sets, to understand data in context, to promote standard citation practices, to expose the quality research being conducted at your institution. Introducing the Data Citation Index on Thomson Reuters Web of Knowledge. For more than 50 years, Thomson Reuters has provided intelligent information to accelerate research, discovery, and innovation. Today, more than 20 million researchers around the world rely on Web of Knowledge to uncover connections across a variety of disciplines and content types. And the Data Citation Index lets them start where discoveries begin. The Data Citation Index supports data discovery and interpretation that benefits everyone involved in the research lifecycle: researchers, librarians, and funding organizations. Let's take a closer look. Researchers can easily uncover the right data to leverage in their research. Multidisciplinary data across a variety of repositories around the world can be searched and accessed seamlessly. Data that has been indexed from repositories from around the world to connect to primary research artifacts at any level. These connections make it easy to understand data and its influence in context. Researchers can maximize their research efforts by using and building on the work of their peers. Librarians can maximize their investment by offering a single resource for a complete view of scholarly output, enhancing and expediting the work their researchers and faculty produce, exposing the total research output at their institution, and help their researchers build data management plans that will expose their work and support grant requirements. As requirements for data management plans grow, you will have early insight into the leading repositories and best practices, enabling you to provide guidance and leadership for your institution and your faculty. Funding organizations can increase the visibility of the work they support and make more informed awarding decisions, making the data they have funded discoverable to other researchers around the world, creating links between research and the literature it informed, and enabling future research to build upon previous discoveries, reducing duplication of efforts and maximizing resources. Across the research workflow, the Data Citation Index makes research data citable, usable, and discoverable. creating intelligent connections that lead to brilliant results. New discoveries are being made right now. Are you ready?
Of course. Why is my clock there? I don't know. That's strange. Of course, that's commercial. Huh? It's Thomson Reuters. They make money out of that. But I mean, at the moment, they're the only one doing it. I mentioned OpenAir. OpenAir is meant to provide similar services, publicly funded, in open access. But still, the main developments are made by Thomson Reuters. They have the money to do it. And this is why also we work with them, because that's the best way to go forward. Especially with cross-linking data in journal publications. The way it was done before in articles, you would simply cite my data is available at BODC or at the national data centers or whatever. You would just cite where it is. Sometimes you'd provide a URL or a link or something. Then the second step was to move to have data sets with unique identifiers, DOIs or citations, saying my data, you can get you can cite it this way, you can get it at this DOI, this URL. But the link was always going from the paper to the data. Now we're at the moment going for links going both ways. You can discover a data set and you find out where it comes from, so you directly link to the article and vice versa. And we feel that in the future, in fact, the main link might be data to articles. We feel that people will start, if we make access a lot easier to scientists, we'll start looking for data first and then going back to the paper to get more details about how the data was collected. It might get to that point. So examples, at the moment all the developments about cross-linking are dominated by Pangea on the data side and Elsevier mainly, Thomson Reuters, and collaborations with other data publishers, and not data publishers but journal publishers. This I could give an example live. So that's a data set. Yes?
One question. I'm just trying to match the process. So I have my article and I want to publish it in journal X. And I want to publish my data set somewhere. I'm sending my article to peer review, to the journal. I don't know if it's going to be accepted. So when I contact the journal, I also contact Pangea to tell them I'm interested in...
Yeah, the workflow is not established yet.
Because I would like to write in the journal, my data is available here.
Yep.
And the opposite way, if I publish my data there, in Pangea, I want to say, you can read my article in journal X. Do you see how you make that connection?
Well, you could publish your data set at the same time. You could publish the data set first, and then write in your paper the data set is available there, so that even the reviewers could go to Pangea to see the data and actually review the data itself as well. You can also, the way it's done mainly at the moment is to publish a paper, and then we harass the scientists to publish the data as well, so they publish it afterwards in Pangea, and then we make the link with the journal publisher to make sure that you can go from one to the other. Eventually, we were working with journal publishers to have a joint editorial system, joint peer review system, so that both are submitted at the same time and that we have reviewers looking at the data and the paper. So to answer the question, at the moment, if you can submit the data set first and then refer to it in the paper when you submit it, that would be the easiest, or you can send both at the same time. But Yeah, a publisher should not say don't submit a data set to a data repository. They won't say that. Some have preferences. Some will have a list of data archive that they have accredited, let's say. So they will accept only data from some data repositories. But you always find Pangea in there. You always find Dryad in there. And I checked, you talked about a journal, and it's Dryad for that journal. But they usually will accept any of the big data publishers. Yes. So at the moment, there's no unique way. As long as you publish both the data sets and the paper, that's fine. Even if the paper doesn't get accepted. Well, you can always publish a revision of the data set. Maybe the problem is not the data set. Maybe it's just the interpretation. But if you need to revise the data set, you can always do that. Yeah. So that's one data set at Pangea, and that's the citation of the paper that is corresponding. And just to... It's convenient to have the clock, in fact. So that's online. So from Pangea, if you click on there, you get to... the source data set. You get to the journal publisher, that's Elsevier, I would say. Yes. So at the moment, the best cross-linking services are between Pangea and Elsevier, where on the side of Elsevier, you will get a citation of the data set in the paper, but they also use a web service from Pangea. So they display on their web page directly the data set available. So if you go first to the paper, you see that data sets are available. You just click there, and you go back directly to Pangea to get the data, which is then downloadable. Now I'm promoting Pangea, I know it's not good, but at the moment, the best and the only cross-linking that exists between journals and data publishers is between Pangea and the others. Yep. That's another example. So we have the same service with PubMed Central as well, and many other. So I won't spend time on that. Data reuse, I'll just show an example that I showed yesterday. But first, that's another graph showing, yes, that's the year of the paper publication, and that's the number of data set per reused paper, showing, I mean, it's not, oh, where the clock is. So more data sets are available and more people do it. At the moment, that's all we can say, but getting data sets in papers is becoming a trend, and reusing them, there are issues with reusing data, but the more we do it, the better we'll resolve these issues. Yes. So that's the example that I showed yesterday about the Maridat compilation. It was done in Earth System Science Data. There you have the link. Again, that's the services are less developed with ESSD, but then you have the link to Pangea. And what I want to show, so what we archive from these data compilations, and that's the way we should go in the future. So we archive, as I showed yesterday, data products, the netcdf file, the gridded data products, the harmonized data set that was used to create the netcdf, but also if you submit a compilation that you did compiling data from 100 papers, we also go through the step of archiving these 100 data sets separately, so that we provide credit to the authors of the original data sets. Oops. And that's this one here. For that compilation, that's about nitrogen fixers. So you have all these data sets, so it was 94 data sets, 94 source data sets that we archive individually, so that they get the credit for their data set, for the work they did. So that's the way we should go in the future. And that's the way you should go about doing it if you do compilations. Make sure that when you make a compilation, at every step you keep track of where the data came from. Either a DOI, ideally a DOI, or a link, but always keep track when you do a compilation of where the data comes from. That's the message. Any questions? Yes?
What about, sometimes we compile data and we have a data set, but it can be updated. But it has been, you publish your data set. 5 years later, you have an updated data set. Can you republish it?
You republish it as a new data set with a new DOI. We won't erase. If you have small corrections, we can do that and make a note. But if you do a considerable revision of the data set, then we republish it with a new DOI. So you can always, as a modeler, if you used a data compilation published 5 years ago, we don't want to get rid of that, because if you want to reuse that old data set, you can always do it. And so revisions get a new separate DOI. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
You had mentioned about your databases. You could have mentioned the Catalogue of Life also.
The Catalogue of Life.
Yes.
Because if you register there, they update their database every year, and then they send it to all those who have registered. They send it in a CD. It is a part of GBIF.
Okay.
You can register there, and then they give you the porifera database, the coral database, the fish, everything. They send it to you in a CD. And once you load it, you have direct access. You can easily download.
Okay. That's something that different data centers do. Pangea does it sometimes for projects. BODC, so the British data center, does it a lot. It's always possible. We tend to go for online compilations with warehouses.
Yeah, because in some areas, like, they may not have direct access to internet. That is an issue.
Yeah.
So especially for students, and this has a database which once you register, they keep on sending you every year. It's Marine Life actually, and all the databases are included. The porifera, the arthropoda, everything is there. Everything is updated every year, and then they send it to you in a CD. That is for those who don't have access.
That's yes, interesting idea for a service. Yeah, definitely. Thanks. There's a question there first. It's okay? Or, yeah. It's coming to you.
I just have a comment. I think there is another positive influence of publishing the data you use for your research. You publish a paper. Because if you are the only one who analyzes data and publish your results, you may make some mistakes and you don't know about it. But if you publish your data with your results, then other people can use that data, then probably can check on you and see.
Yes, but that usually is a fear of scientists. So, but
so I just notice that. Yeah.
For the community, it's an advantage.
Yes.
For the individuals, it's sometimes a fear.
That's it.
So if the data set that you want published, so you have a raw data set and like processed at several levels to, will you submit it as like separate data sets, like raw data set, and then
You mean it's no longer observations? It's a model output,
or you've already done some processing on the data, like cleaning it up a bit, or
no. In that case, for example, with CTD data, simple physical oceanography data, the raw data before processing we would attach as a flat file, but the processed one would be incorporated in the database. So we incorporate in the database validated data. Raw in a sense that it's the observation, but validated after you've done a quality check on it. If you have the raw data unvalidated, then we just attach it as a file. So if someone wants to go back to the raw, they can, but they just download it from an FTP server.
Thank you.
Do you recommend by any chance publishing data and paper parallel?
In paper,
Starting the process at the same time?
I didn't get the end of your question.
Do you recommend like starting the process of publishing data and paper at the same time?
Yes, well, definitely not publishing the data after the paper, either before or at the same time, I would say. So that the aim is to get to a joint review of scientific output, so that the reviewers, the peer reviews, can look both at what is written in the paper and go back to the raw data. We want to provide access to the raw data. So either at the same time or before, I would say.
Yes. I mean, it seems like. Oh, sorry. It seems like. I mean, I know some people who would be nervous about that, about having their data be publicly accessible before the paper is published. Particularly, sometimes reviews can take up to a year before the paper actually is done.
It can be password protected.
Okay. Yeah. Great.
So that's another step that we're aiming for. When I talk about a joint editorial system, a joint peer review system, it would come with password protection and some sort of. We need to think about confidentiality. Yeah.
One is skepticism about people who don't rely upon their own quality of data. Like you said, individuals are afraid that the quality of the data will be checked upon. There's another thing about the ideas, because sometimes the data is so good that the idea is very clear, whatever you interpret out of it. So if your paper doesn't get accepted and your paper is not published, but someone else uses the data and publishes before you, then what?
That's why I'm saying, at the moment, several data sets are password protected. We get that request very often. And if an author tells us, we publish the data, but it has to be protected, we cannot say no.
What's the use of then repositing data which people can't use?
Well, already the step of making it, of sending it to an archive, of us doing quality check on them, harmonizing the metadata, that's the first step. And then just saying, yes, now you can release it, make it open access, that's easy. But the first step we have to do is to
do you give your reviews of your quality check to the authors? Because after you get the data, you do a quality check on it. So do you give your analysis of the quality check to the authors?
We don't send a report, but we do send the data set, like, we would send the URL of the data set. Well, we send them to that, and we ask the author, please validate, please check the metadata, please open the data file, check the way the data is displayed.
Give out your impressions about the data.
If we do, it's in our ticket system. We have a communication system between authors and curators. So all the the discussion happens there. But there's no report in itself. No.
You're not talking about the worldwide project of gathering the data from the archives of the institutes all over the world. Because, for example, at our institute we have a huge amount of data that was digitized partly or not digitized. And I'm afraid it's not free available. Despite it, we have a lot of measurements that were done in the 20th century, in the previous century, in the Atlantic, in the Indian Ocean. As I know, the last decade there were some projects that were financed by United States researchers. They paid us to digitize the measurements, but I don't know where is the data now.
Sergei Pirinkowski.
Yeah.
For example, yes. Well, that data is in Pangea now.
Yeah, the data already in Pangea.
Yeah, it's all in Pangea.
But how?
But there are several.
What can you advise us how to attract the funding, how to start the projects to digitize and make this data available? Because, for example, as I know, I have one project in my mind. Now we are going to get access to the military archives of Russian naval submarines that measured very interesting information deeply in the deep waters, and that might be very interesting for us. But I want to share the data to other people.
Funding for you, and funding that I know of, would come through EU projects, for example. Euraoceans has funded data rescue from IBSS in Ukraine.
So we should apply for this?
Well, you have to include that in the budget of EU projects, or sometimes you have initiatives like EMONNet. EMONNet has funded some rescue from IBSS as well. Yeah, there's no... yeah, you have to look around for different projects that fund data rescue.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Yep. Any other questions before lunch? Because it's lunchtime. Nope. Thank you.